making your life difficult?
Like,
Yes, he is. Okay. Yep, we're live. Okay, everybody. My name is Deepthi. I work with Westland, and we've just brought out Kashif's book, Mortuary Tales. And I want to welcome you all to this conversation between Hossein and Kashif. Um, Hossein barely needs any introduction. He's an investigative journalist, a former investigative journalist who followed for many years the Mumbai Mafia. And his books, he's of course an author, and his books are not just bestsellers, but they were really truly breakthrough works in the true crime genre in India, starting with Black Friday, which was about the Bombay Blast and which was also made into this critically acclaimed film. Apart from many other things that he does now runs Golden Pen, which is a content curation company under which he mentors writers in the genres of nonfiction, crime, horror, fantasy. And one of those writers is Kashif, who has worked with Hussein on several writing projects, but this is his first novel. And Mortuary Tales is this really compelling, intriguing debut. It just sort of shows such an interesting dark side to Bombay and to the human mind. And we just loved it at Westland. But I'm going to leave this conversation. I want Hussein to talk to Kashif more about Mortuary Tales and the whole journey of bringing it out. So I'm going to leave it over to you guys now. All right, Hussein?
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dipti. Thank you very much. Um, Dipti was very kind when she introduced me. But here I'm going to talk about Kashif, and the man is, full of talent, myriad talents, multiple talents, and I will only talk about my personal equations with him before I move on to my question answer session. Kashif and I met in a very unlikely circumstance of he contacted me on Facebook and trying to say if I would like to read his manuscript, which he feels was vetted by a top international agent, and he feels that he could create sensation with the manuscript. Unfortunately, when I read that manuscript, I thought, yaar, ye to usme maza nahi aa raha. It is not such a fantastic thing that you have been trying to pitch for. So then we discussed and we argued, and though he kept on believing in that manuscript, but I said, boss, I will not pitch for this one. You should come up with something else. And lo and behold, instead of Kashif sulking and instead of he getting depressed about his very prized manuscript getting rejected by me, he comes up with fantastic idea about two people, one old man about to retire and working as a peon in mortuary in Mumbai hospital, like JJ hospital types, which has huge and a very deadly mortuary. Once when Vikram Chandra and I went there while we were working for Sacred Games, you will not believe I did not sleep for 3 4 days. And Vikram once spoke to me after 4 days saying they keep coming back. I said, who keep coming back? He said those dead guys that we saw in that huge pile of the bodies at JJ hospital. So then Kashif's one of the protagonists of Kashif is this guy, old man Jeevan Ram. And there's one unemployed MBA youth who couldn't get any job elsewhere, so he comes and he joins this mortuary as a temporary worker. And both of them, I think you can imagine Vikram and Vital, they both have a conversation. And through these two people, Kashif has narrated fantastic 9 stories. I mean, some of those, I'm not a big horror fan, but while reading some of those stories, when I got goosebumps and chills, and I said, "Yaar, Kashif, sone de yaar." I mean, these are so deadly stories. So you read Harun Hatela, and he's he's totally very spooky guy, and then there's such a one story of an old woman and who's not dying despite all the efforts by the angel of death. I mean, there are such 8 9 fantastic story, and the conversation between Vikram and Vital, Jeevan Ram, and this guy, so I think you all will enjoy this journey, this ride. I will not reveal more about it. You need to buy the book and you want to read it, and only then you will realize that how it's a fantastic, fun reading. You visualize everything like it's happening right in front of you, like you're standing in mortuary, like you're seeing all those dead bodies talking to you, and things are happening around you. Those ghosts, those spirits, those souls, they are hovering and they are there around you, and they are, you know, boring over your mind, and you are totally possessed by them and totally dominated by them. So before I take any more time, I think I will start talking to Kashif, and I'll ask him about his book. So Mr. Kashif Mashaikh, welcome to the fraternity of authors and writers. and I
Thank you.
would say it's a fantastic debut. You have made me proud. Fantastic, I would say. So, tell me why you are so fascinated with horror. Why not crime? Why not romance? Why not mystery? Why not other such stuff? But horror.
Yes, sir. So, firstly, I think this horror and dark fiction has always been a passion for me. Even when I was growing up and reading books, and even like when I was growing up and watching television, I think those that period of the early 90s was like a golden age for Indian horror. So, a lot of that, came into the kind of creative pursuits that I followed. And there's also this natural affinity for, जैसे you are always drawn towards, the true crime genre and you've mastered it. So I was drawn to this genre, and inshallah, I will also try to master it, sir, like you.
But you have a house somewhere near some shan or some cemetery, is it? That you have some affinity towards horror? That you have seen among so much of dead people around you that you thought you write about them? What
No,
is
sir,
that?
yeah, sir. So there is a certain when you're fearful, you feel alive.
Hmm.
That rush of adrenaline, it makes you feel alive. So I remember, like, I was like, even say, I think 7 or 8 years old, and they had this Z horror show on ZTV at that time, and that first episode really spooked me out. They had like a shrieking head scene with Archana Puran Singh on a breakfast table, and I couldn't sleep for 2 days. So to get that kind of thrill is also like a high that you can give to the reader. So that is where I think, sir, it comes from.
So why this choosing of nine stories, and how do you choose and select these nine stories that you're going to tell these stories and try to make us all very frightened and scared of all this spooky things?
Yes, sir. So I chose them very carefully, sir, because I wanted to I wanted to have the book to like have a nice kind of a crescendo. So there are some extreme screamers, there are some mild stories, there are a few emotional ones too. Uh, a lot of them come from, sir, real life, like the Harun Hatela thing that you spoke about.
Yeah.
Uh, he was that character I drew from a real life character. I think you profiled him in the Dirty Dozen as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
The most deadliest sharpshooter in the history of Mumbai Mafia.
Mhm.
So I like you wrote a very realistic take on Firoz
Mhm.
Kokni in that
Mhm.
book, and what
Yeah.
I wrote for Harun Hatela was like a very fictional take of what could have
Mhm.
been. So
Mhm.
वहाँ से I picked up that idea, and there are a few other stories that about two brothers who were very close once, but now as life progresses, sir, relations change, and then things do not remain the same. So I put that kind of story inspired by someone I knew. Uh, so there's a bit of fact, a bit of fiction in all of that. What I've put together.
You mean to say that all these nine stories are inspired from real life incidents that you have written about them?
Not all of them, sir. Of course, there is like one story about a man who believes that his neighbors are vampires. The people living on the floor above, they are vampires. So that was completely a figment of my imagination.
Okay.
As writers, of course, we try, when we write, we take liberty when we are doing fiction. So I just let my imagination run wild, I can say.
So how do you write a story? How do you visualize a story? How do you start thinking about horror? See, as I said, since I write crime, so I know that how a crime is. Basically, I also write true crime stories. So for me, I don't have to build or create or imagine much. I just take it from real life and I translate them for the readers into the story format. How do you imagine a horror story, and how do you plan the beginning, the middle, and the end?
Yes, sir. So the beginning, of course, is very important. I think this is one of the things I've learned from you also. So to hook the reader, you really need to have a very compelling first line. So even to write the first line, sometimes we take days, and
Hmm.
we reiterate, and उसपे, we kind of like go through it again and again until we get that perfect opening.
Hmm.
uh, for the ideas, of course, they come from everywhere. Sometimes, when as writers, when we are sleeping or even like just walking along the road or even traveling in the train, something hits you, and then it stays for some time. Like, you get a lot of ideas, but there are a few particular ideas which will always stay with you. You can't just get them out of your head. So those are the ideas I kind of tend to develop. And then I've also spent a lot of time practicing the craft and learning the craft. on my own, and plus by reading other authors whom I've admired. So that gives you the sense of how to construct the story, and if you work at it for a long period of time, you can of course come up with a good story.
So, which of this is your favorite story among these nine stories? Which one do you like the most?
Yeah, sir. So after horror, I think my second favorite genre is crime. So the Harun Hatela story is my favorite. And if there was, अगर उसमें मतलब थोड़ी colorful language कम होती, if I had not used a little bit, if the colorful language was a little less, I would have put it at number one. But just so that the shock subsides, I put it at number two
Okay.
in the book. Yeah.
So, tell me something about the summary of the story. Exactly, you would like to tell me something about it in short. What do you think
Mhm.
that whole story, Harun Attala, is about? Is it an underworld guy dying and becoming a ghost? What is it?
No, sir. So it's closer to reality. I think it will fall in the genre of dark fiction.
Hmm.
But like sir, and there is no better judge of this story than you, because when we were growing up in the 90s, there was this huge spate of encounters and mafia, and bullets were flying, people were dying, and Bombay was not what it is now. It was a
Right.
very different place, and
Hmm.
like the people who were there at that time who've like been through these instances, it must have been spine chilling for them to go
Hmm.
through such experiences.
Hmm.
And just that name, Firoz Kokni's name, would kind of chill everybody's spine.
Hmm.
But ultimately, of course, he met his death. So there was a nice conflict in that. There is this one chap who's who's like a college dropout or something, and he's very ruthless.
Hmm.
But he will also meet his end in some way or the other, and perhaps a more dastardly end than what he's put others through.
Hmm.
So एक अच्छा कॉन्फ्लिक्ट था उसमें जो मैंने पिकअप करने की ट्राई किया.
Okay. So, what is the horror part in it? The dying of the hitman?
Yeah, so the horror, sir, it is more subtle. It's not a scream and jump story as such. It's more
Hmm.
subtle. So it kind of tells you that that no matter how difficult you are, or how fearful you are, there will always be someone who will be able to cut you to size. So
Hmm.
horror can come in different flavors. I think this flavor I tried to put into that story.
So, are you inspired by some writers, or have you read foreign authors and foreign writers, or have you seen too many horror movies? What is exactly a source of inspiration to write horror stories?
So, sir, as a writer of dark fiction, of course, I have read a lot of Stephen King. Uh, and I was like very inspired by some of his books like Night Shift or Skeleton Crew. They were like a compilation of short stories which I thoroughly enjoyed.
Hmm.
So when I wanted to write on my own, I kind of gravitated towards that, and I tried to see if I can bring that kind of fiction into for the Indian audiences,
Hmm.
because in India the genre is not as developed as per se as say perhaps the crime genre is, or the Indian mythology genre is. The horror genre is still there to explore. There are avenues which can be explored in that. So when it comes to like foreign writers, of course, Stephen King was a huge inspiration for me,
So, what
and
about
also.
inspiration from back home? I mean, have you got inspired? Because we all have grown up on the that pulp of the Ramsey brand of movies, Sannata, Virana, Haveli, Darwaza, all those kind of things we've seen. So, have you seen those movies, and have you ever borrowed or acquired anything from those kind of dangerous movies?
So, sir, I haven't borrowed, but if yes, of course, I have been influenced by that. Like right now, we can just look back and laugh. Okay, there's this woman who's roaming on the streets and she's devouring people for fun. But when you are like say 5 or 6 or 7 and you're watching that, it was really scary at that point of time. अभी in retrospect भी हम लोग हंस सकते हैं वो चीज पे, but वो टाइम तो उतना फनी नहीं था, वो काफी डरावना था. So yeah, I've been inspired by that uh, on the movies part as such, of course. Uh, Also, when it comes to like the back inspiration back home, when it comes to writing, I think two writers have really inspired me. One of them, of course, उनका नाम लेने तक की औकात नहीं है, but Vikram Chandra, of course, huge inspiration. The first story that I read of his was incidentally a horror story. In Love and Longing in Bombay, he opens
Hmm.
up with a story called Dharma,
Hmm.
and that had a horror element too. So that was a huge influence on me. And of course, after that, I read Sacred Games also. So Vikram Chandra sir, his style, storytelling, unparalleled, big inspiration. And after that, if there's another Indian author that has inspired me, sir, that is you. Like in 2006, I read Black Friday, and it completely changed the way I, viewed the world. And I think it ushered in a new era in non-fiction. उससे पहले, like, there was not much interest in crime. Like Bollywood must have exploded, but in terms of the literary world, no one ever thought कि gangsters and mafia पे book लिख के इतना वो subject explore किया जा सकता है. So you pioneered that era uh, into this industry. So Dongri to Dubai and Black Friday, huge influences on me.
Thank you, Kashif, for saying your kind words. But despite reading Sacred Games, Black Friday, Don't Do the Way, you did not choose crime. You chose horror.
Yes, sir.
I'll just come to my next story question, but before that, is your book also having those kind of creatures that we have seen in Ramsey movies and horror movies, where we see those zombies coming to life and they're attacking people, like even in Ramsey movies, or I saw some Hollywood horror also, where suddenly those evil spirits possess this body and this very dangerous looking demon will go and attack people. Is your story also having those kind of things? Because you
No, sir.
it's about ghosts, spirits, about bhatakti atma. So what exactly is your thing conveying?
So my books are mostly like the horror of the 90s is vastly different from the horror of say 2020.
Hmm.
So the jump scares are not there, but there's a more psychological element to it. I think the mind can create the biggest ghost.
Hmm.
So what I try to explore is more of into a psychological mood where it's a kind of a blend of dark fiction, horror, fantasy. There are elements of vampires and creatures in my book as well, but more than that, these are human stories. What humans can feel and what how they interact and how fear can change their thinking and their minds. The book that tries to explore that.
So I whatever we have seen of horror so far is I'm just trying to talk about the stereotypes and cliches of horror that we have seen about one haveli, one deserted mansion. We have
Hmm.
seen one very lonely spot which is people say there are ghosts, or one mountain, or one those kind of places. Why have you chosen mortuary, the mortuary tales? Why was that the reason that you wrote a book on mortuary tales? I
Yes, sir.
find that this book title itself.
Yeah, yeah, sir. So mortuary is like such a place wherein the name itself will evoke uncomfortableness in you. And as you mentioned at the start of the show, like you and Vikram sir went to a mortuary, and that itself gave you the creeps for certain days to follow. So I wanted to put the reader in that spot. Like for common people like us, the mortuary is a very scary place. But what about say those who work over there? For them, it will just be like another day at the office,
Hmm.
but for the reader, it can give him the creep straight away. If you put the reader in a mortuary in a room full of dead bodies, and there where two people are sitting and discussing life with each other, so there's a nice little irony in that. And also there's one another reason that like all religions have this concept of afterlife. So the mortuary is like a transitory state. It's like a bridge that one has to cross when you go from one world to the other. So it was a nice setting for the book actually. So that's why I chose it, sir.
No, actually, I really find mortuaries to be a very scary place because we all have seen mortuary in the movies, in the shows, where they pull one drawer and there's one dead body, lying calmly, and we all see that dead body, and the drawer is closed. Actually, in real life, mortuaries are much more scarier than what we see in movies because that experience itself that I've been to that JJ mortuary where dead bodies were piled on top of each other, like you see gunny bags in warehouses, and you see,
Mhm.
some eyes are open, some are staring at you, some bearded guys are having very weird expression on the face. So I don't know, like it was a very very horrifying experience. We went there I think somewhere in 1996, 97, which looks like about 24 years ago, but to me I can still recall that pile of dead bodies. So I understand that how mortuaries are really very fearsome place. So coming to my last question, Kashif, before we throw open this floor for question answer from the audience, what is your next project? Is it about again horror or what is it about?
Yeah. So it's again connected to the dark fiction horror fantasy genre. Uh, I think it's a I'm trying to work the story out, but it'll be a mix of a horror story and a love story. Something that maybe I think there was this movie called Raz. So I like that concept very much. On the basis of a horror story, you can also tell a love story.
Hmm.
So horror एक ऐसा genre है where you can mix and match. You can pull in something from crime. You can pull in something from say the paranormal. You can pull in something from a love story. So I'm trying to work on that. Inshallah, let's
Wow,
see if
Ashif, you're
Westland.
trying to blend everything. You're putting everything to a mixer grinder, the love, romance, crime, mystery, and then you're just trying to put that mixer blender and trying to serve it to us as a dish, is it?
Let's hope you like it. Sir. That's all I can say.
So, what about that particular manuscript where, I mean, we disagreed? So, what are you going to do with that manuscript? What are your plans with that one? Because that book is
Sir,
ready and
yeah, sir. Sir, I think you were right on that. I think Indian audience, it may not. The story that I had was like more on the zombie apocalypse. It might not work in India. So, inshallah, with Mortuary Tales, maybe doing well. Maybe we can publish it internationally.
fantastic. Wow. So, is there a plan for sequel of Mortuary Tales? Where are there more tales remaining which you'd like to go take in for the next book, or what's your like idea?
Sir, if the book does well, obviously we can look at that. The response initially has been really great. It's been overwhelming as such.
Okay.
But of course, we can do a volume two. It can be considered like a franchise. If we can work on that, we can maybe develop a franchise around it as well.
The
But
sequels, the era of
yeah,
sequels, you mean?
yeah. So we can have like a Mochi Details Volume One, maybe a Mochi Details Volume Two.
Fantastic. So, very well planned and well crafted strategy that you have. I really hope you become future Stephen King of India and very worthy successor to him. So, I'm ready for any question answers. If any audience would like to ask any questions, they can just type their question in this box and then we can start.
Okay. So there's one question from the audience, sir. When did you first realize you want to be an author? When you want to be a writer? So
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and answer that.
Sure, sure,
Uh,
sure.
I think, sir, 2015, I started writing seriously after failing at a lot of things. Uh,
You must
but I
tell
was
them you
always,
also have a day job. They should not think that you're doing writer as a profession. You
yeah,
tell
yeah,
them you
true.
also have a job, and apart from that, you're writing as a passion. Yes, sorry.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So yeah, I work for a e-learning startup in Bombay, and I think for the creative satisfaction, I started writing, and then I started taking it seriously somewhere around in 2015. And for 3 years, I could get nothing published. Like I tried, but uh, we had to
You
face
also
like a
cried and cried and cried. Sorry.
no, sir, no crying. It only made me stronger. Never, it only made me stronger. It only made me want to get better at the craft, and it also made me realize what my writing was lacking. And which is why after 3 years, when I coincidentally met you, I was ready for whatever projects that you gave me. The behind bar assisting in behind bars with Baikalla, assisting with, and then I got that opportunity to work with you on Class of '83 as well, assisting you on that book. That
Yeah.
really opened up the doors for me, and after that, it became easier. So rejection, yes, it's like a part of the writing process. You have to pay your dues. You have to work hard, and if if with Blue Salt Media also, it things became easier after our association started in 2018. Yes.
Fantastic. So there's a next question here. I think which I already asked, but they've asked, but why did you base your story on a mortuary and workers in mortuary?
So the mortuary is just the frame, sir. Mortuary एक frame है जिसके अंदर हम लोग अलग अलग किस्म की कहानियां सुना रहे हैं.
Hmm.
Uh, so there are these two people who are there in the mortuary and they are telling different tales. Those different tales are set in various other locations.
Hmm.
And the basis of the story why I picked up, I think I already answered. It kind of puts the reader into uncomfortable place. And
Hmm.
as a writer, we should never be afraid to confront the reader.
Hmm.
We should be able to be in the reader's face if that's what takes to make the reader get the payoff at the end of the book.
Okay. Yeah. Any more questions?
No, sir. I think that's about it. There's one asking, can you share your favorite excerpt or story from the book? Yeah. So the story again I spoke about, that's the Harun Hatela story. It's the absolute best for me, and a lot of readers also told me that they liked it very much. There are some different people tell me that they like different stories from the book, which is good. So that there was something in the book for everyone who read it.
Hmm. So I think there's one question which is directed at me. Which was your favorite book which you have written? I think that's directed at me, or it's for you.
Sir, I think you should answer that one. I've written only one book. आपने 12 लिखी है.
Well, I've said so many times that for an author, saying that which was his favorite book is a very difficult question to answer, because for it's like father having four children, and it's very difficult to say, okay, which of these four children of mine this one is favorite. He can't do that; it will be unfair to his children as well as for his own emotions. But as I said, that going by the sentimentality, I would say Black Friday, because that was the first book that I wrote. So my firstborn, and I am very passionately connected to this book. I mean, I might have written 11 books, and some books have sold even more than Black Friday. But the kind of emotion that I have attached with this book is something which I will never forget. I'll never get over it. So there's one question towards you, Kashif, that how did you manage your professional work and passion for writing?
Yes, sir. It's difficult. It's not easy to work, say, 8 or 9 hours on a shift and then put another 2 or 3 hours into writing. But I think a lot of that credit also should go to my wife. I think she's been a very equal partner in this journey. So she takes care of a lot of things, which kind of frees me up to pursue this passion. And hopefully, I'll be able to justify the kind of maybe the hopes or aspirations that my friends and family, and of course you and Kartika ma'am, or even say the publishers have from me. So it's a tough balance, but if you are really passionate, you'll find a way.
Fantastic. But would you like to give a word of advice to all those guys who are, because I see some of the comments here where people are saying they also write. So would you like to tell them that how to maintain an equilibrium, as in, because see, my one word of caution is that writing in India does not pay unless you are in the very top bracket where you're selling lakhs and millions of copies. So you don't have to do anything else. But if you're a writer who is into a medium bracket where your books sell in thousands, but just that. So for such a person, you need to do something else for your survival and your livelihood. So then I think you have to strike a balance where you have to work so that you survive, you feed your children and you pay your EMIs, and then at the same time follow your passion of writing. I think Kashif has managed to crack this formula very well, where he's also ensuring that he can write without the burden of taking care of daily struggles and daily lives, which I think if others can also do, then writing will become easy for you. Is that true, Kashif?
Yes, sir. I think in there was one session which I attended. You and Vikram sir were in there, and he said one thing at that point of time, that even award-winning writers have day jobs. I really found that to be a fascinating insight. That if someone like Vikram Chandra says that even award-winning writers have day jobs, it is essential that that you maintain a steady flow of income while you pursue your passion. Because sir, खाली पेट तो creativity हो नहीं सकती.
Correct.
To be creative, you have to have that financial security as well.
True.
But to anyone who's out there, trying to like break into the industry, I would say just keep working on it, keep honing your craft, and hopefully you will find your way. The journey is very difficult, but the payoff is really nice.
Fantastic. I think that's a very nice, invaluable advice to all those budding writers who want to see how Kashif has managed to crack the algorithm of Holy Grail and become a writer as well as he's holding his job so that his family is not disappointed with him. There is one question I see here, Kashif, for you. That since now you have discussed the sequels for Mortuary, do you think that all your nine stories can develop into individual sequels?
Uh, Maybe, sir, but it won't be like a full length novel might be difficult on each story. Like if you go about it, ho sakta hai, but uh, it will really have to be a very conscious choice, especially because now the stories are out. It depends. I mean, it could be adapted into a larger medium per se, but if can they be full length books, I'm not sure, sir. If I've given enough thought to that.
No, because if you ask my advice on it, I would think that you should not even fall into the trap of trying to develop those stories, individual stories, into sequel, unless there's a huge demand from the authors, or unless publishers are really insisting on you developing those particular stories. But as a book, for example, how Jeffrey Archer or how those short story writers have had their own short story sequels and those several books and anthologies, I think you can think in that term what having horrors. For example, you wrote one mortuary tale, then there could be, say, one Shamshan stories, and there could be one graveyard tales, those kind of stuff. So maybe those could be the way of thinking. I'm just thinking aloud. I don't know how you want to look at it. My forte is really not horror and all that stuff. I'm just thinking if a reader wants to read those things.
Sure, sir. Of course, we can. Maybe we can discuss it later.
So there's one question which I think I'll pass on to you, Kashif. Are we going to see any books to be launched about biological warfare and associated crimes?
Sir, I
I think
think,
Corona has really, you know, wreaked a lot of havoc on people's minds and seeing any biological warfare kind of stuff.
sir, that's. I think maybe Bilal or you will be better people to answer that question. This cyber terrorism or biological warfare. It's really your domain. आपने मतलब master किया उसको. So not for me. I mean, I wouldn't be able to pull that off. It requires a certain kind of speciality, which I don't think I have at this point of time. But interesting concept. Biological warfare can also lead to spin-offs. So maybe we can
I'm
think
thinking
of.
the way we had this recent movie, Robot, I think Robot 2, where we saw one Atma, which was so concerned about birds and 5G, and how that Atma came into life, and kind of it became a horror movie. Akshay Kumar becoming a ghost and trying to take revenge from the technological people. So my whole thing is, even in biological warfare, you can think of something like how one Atma or maybe one ghost or one scientist can, I don't know. These are just the thoughts for fertile imagination. So I think Ketki, we have got enough questions. Do you want to wrap this up? Are any more questions happening?
No, sir. I think we are through with most of them.
I think I can see some questions here. Um they're saying, can you do something for the USA people? My
Uh,
last question is, can you do something for USA people? I don't understand this question. Rahul Ma is asking this question. I don't know what does it mean.
so even I'm not too clear, sir.
One question was, what is your writing kryptonite?
Sir, I think it's more or less natural, sir. I'm really passionate about writing, which is why when I write, it doesn't feel like a lot of work. I can put in that extra hours, and it's passion driven basically. So that's the kryptonite.
Okay. So then I think if there are no more questions coming up, then we can wind up the session.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Kashif. It was
Yes,
nice
sir.
chatting with you and trying to understand your inner thoughts and share with our audiences that what exactly it is like to be a writer, and a first-time writer choosing horror and not taking the shortcut of a love story. Because for youngsters like you who have just been married, say a couple of years ago, for you a love story seems to be the easiest thing to do. But the way you have taken the difficult part out of your comfort zone and thought of horror story and not in crime. I mean, I must say it shows a lot of courage on your part and a lot of conviction in your genre. All the best to you, Kashif. Thank you very much.
Yes.
May you have a lot
Thank you.
of
Thank you,
success
sir.
in life. And we
Shukriya,
hope
sir.
to read more books from you. Thank you,
Thank,
everyone. Bye bye.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye. Please buy Mortuary Tales. Please read and please give your feedback to Kashif so that he can get encouraged, he can get better in his future writings, and he can keep serving you with better stories. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.